Hi everybody, my name is Tracy Jacobs. I'm the director of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Towson University. I want to welcome you to our spring preview of classes, and as you can see, we're online. Our spring semester is also going to be online, and that starts March 1st. So before you get to hear about all our amazing classes from the instructors themselves, I want to take a few minutes to bore you to tears with some very important information. That the Osher staff, we continue to work from home this semester. So please get in touch with us. Please, please, please use email. And the best way to get in touch with the Osher staff is through osher@towson.edu. So please register for your classes online. If you haven't already seen an email from us with instructions on registering online, you'll be getting that, but you'll also be able to find information on how to register online and those links to register on our website. You can go to www.towson.edu/Osher. Definitely avoid, if you can, mailing us anything. Now, if you do have to mail us anything at all, whether it's a registration form or a check or anything like that, we insist that you also email us, so that you email us to let us know that you're mailing us something, because that way we can keep an eye out for it. Otherwise, it might be weeks before we would even know that something was being sent. Registration is going to open at midnight on Tuesday, February 2nd. Please, please register as soon as possible. We want to make sure you register at least a week before classes. So by February 22nd, please have your registration into us. We definitely need you to register in time for us to give you the information that you need to take the classes, right? There are some courses that have some limited enrollment, so it's another good reason to register as quickly as you can. Most courses are going to be recorded. There are going to be a few that will not be recorded, and we'll let you know which ones those are. But the recorded courses will only be available to those folks who are registered to take that course. Communication, that's very important. So we need to get in touch with you to let you know these kinds of things. And the best way for us to do that is through email. And so our emails are coming to you from a towson.edu email, so make sure that those are safe in your email, that you're getting them, that we're not going into your spam, and that you check your email on a regular basis. We also have a bi-weekly newsletter that comes from a different email list. If you're not getting the newsletter, let us know, and we'll make sure you get on that, because that is a great kind of conduit for all sorts of information. I just want to thank everybody. I really do. It's been really terrific. We really appreciate your support this past semester, all the way back to the spring. It's, really been terrific, and it means a lot to us. I want to thank our members, our instructors, everybody for participating. Our lifelong learners, true to their form, have kind of stepped outside of the comfort zone. I want to thank our volunteers, in particular our book club facilitators, our writing group facilitators, poetry group. We've had our classroom facilitation committee folks who've really done a great job. They did a fantastic job last semester. Our advisory board has done a fantastic job too. They've been meeting with us via Zoom, and that's been really wonderful. And so I want to give a thanks to them. Also, a really big thank you to anybody who's given a donation in the past year. It's been very meaningful. And, thank you to the terrific and hardworking Osher staff. Shelby Jones is the membership coordinator. And then we have Trish Roger, who is our administrative assistant. We have Morgan House, who is our curriculum assistant, and he's also done some video managing last year, and he'll do some this year as well. We also have fantastic colleagues within our division and at the university that I must thank, because without their help, we really would have had a very awful year, and I want to thank them. So they deserve just a huge amount of thanks. And, kind of reminds me of that saying, it takes a village. And so we all know, we've heard that, it takes a village. And I think of that a lot because it sure does. Part of that great community is our instructors. And so now, I guess that's a good segue so that I can introduce the next part of, and the best part of our preview, which is our instructor. And hopefully you'll hear about some classes that you'll enjoy taking this spring. And so thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Hi, how you doing? I didn't see you there. The saxophone was initially invented by the great Belgian woodwind maker Adolphe Sax in 1854, back when Adolphe was a perfectly good first name. And Mr. Sax's vision for this family of instruments was to actually replace all the instruments of the various military bands that were peppering the war-torn European landscape of his time. That vision never really came to fruition. In fact, the saxophone met with very limited success during its inventor's lifetime. And it probably would have blown his mind to learn that his invention wouldn't really find a musical home until it found one in African American music in this country in the 20th century. In my class, the great saxophonist will talk about such legendary practitioners of this instrument as Sidney Bechet, Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, Charlie Bird Parker, John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, Stan Getz, and more. Like all of my classes, there'll be a fair amount of sex, drugs, and jazz, with classic audio recordings, video performances, and yes, indeed, a fair amount of saxophone blowing from this guy as well. Hope to see you in class.
Hi, I'm Julie Kurzava, and today I want to invite you to join me for my spring class at Osher, which is about the collaborative world of songwriter Julie Stein. Now, he is a composer from the American Songbook, which is that wonderful period between the 20s and the 50s, which I personally consider one of our great American exports. And Julie Stein is an interesting guy because he's a little bit less known than some of the ones you would have heard of, like Porter or Gershwin or Irving Berlin. But his career was so long and so varied that he's a fantastic way to get into looking at all the music of that period. For example, he started out as a band leader in Chicago. He worked in New York as a vocal coach. He wrote songs for Hollywood films. He came back and wrote Broadway musicals for big stars. He wrote all kinds of songs for Frank Sinatra with Sammy Cahn. And he just continued well into the 1960s when he wrote Funny Girl for Barbra Streisand. So in this class, I want to look at his life, but also at all the great collaborators he worked with along the way. Great performers like Ethel Merman, Sinatra, Barbra Streisand, etc. And also great writers like Frank Lesser, Comden Green. And we're going to do that by listening to the stories. Obviously, I'll tell you the story of what's going on, but we'll also look at clips. We'll look at musical audio. I'll probably do some singing as well, and we'll be analyzing the songs in the context and trying to just really dig into his work, but also get a greater understanding of the American Songbook. So I hope you'll join me, and I'll see you this spring.
In 4 classes on Pop Divas, we delve into the musical lives of 3 talented women: Barbra Streisand, Bette Midler, and Carole King. In their multifaceted roles as singers, composers, actresses, activists, and philanthropists, their accomplishments have been extraordinary. You will be edutained by highlights of their musical careers spanning 50 years. How did they break into show business? And what personal attributes have taken them to the top? You'll delight in memorable performances from TV, films, and Broadway, Enjoy Streisand performing People, People Who Need People, and The Way We Were. Did you know that Bette Midler was born and raised in Honolulu? Savor her renditions of The Wind Beneath My Wings and From a Distance. Carole King is one of the most popular composer divas and has gained even more popularity since Beautiful, her biography on Broadway. Join in as she sings You've Got a Friend So Far Away and Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? The stories and songs from our divas will delight us emotionally and artistically. Please join in. You're in for a real treat.
What can you say about sequels? Some, like Godfather Part 2, are masterpieces. And then there's Exorcist Part 2. Nevertheless, I'm thrilled that we're launching 8 more plays everyone should know. As usual, I'm committed to bringing a mix of background information, video clips, and live performances to this spring's lineup of great dramas from across the centuries. In addition, those who took the fall class will tell you that I absolutely loved the comments that came in through the chat function. As one would only expect from Osher members, the comments were enlightening, stimulating, and frankly, I stole some stuff that I didn't know myself for the next time I teach. One big point to make about this course is that it's open to everyone, regardless of whether they participated in the fall course or not. All are welcome. What else might entice you? Well, this semester, I think is a little racier. We're going to cover a Roman comedy about women who refuse sex to stop a war. We're going to talk about a steamy, poetic masterpiece about the power of physical attraction. We'll have a revenge comedy about a woman run out of town for committing the sin of being poor and pregnant. And we'll revisit some probably old friends of yours, the Prince of Denmark, the hilarious Lady Bracknell, the battling George and Martha, and the whole town of Grover's Corners. Oh, and we'll meet the ghost of a slave owner who refuses to go away. I know you've been testing yourself. So the plays that we're going to cover are Lysistrata, A Streetcar Named Desire, The Visit, Hamlet, The Importance of Being Earnest, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Our Town, and The Piano Lesson by August Wilson. A few more things that I hope you find appealing. I do send everyone a guide to sources where you can read or view each play online. But of course, it's up to you. Some members told me that they like to come in prepared, and others said that they watch or read the plays after the class, or both. It's totally up to you. Curtain goes up on March 1st, and I hope to see you then.
Hi, I'm Peter Lev, Professor Emeritus of Electronic Media and Film at Towson University. I'm teaching a course on American documentary film. The emphasis will be on themes and approaches to documentary, not on history. The first theme is culture, a broad term covering how we live, what we value, what we enjoy. The class will look at a film about the Cajuns of Southwest Louisiana, and another doc about Wonder Woman as an icon of feminism. For personal expression, we'll discuss Sherman's March, where the director was supposed to make a historical film, but ended up documenting his problems with Southern women. The 2 political films are about Bill Clinton's 1992 campaign and the Central Park Five, 5 minority teenagers who supposedly committed a brutal rape, but were later exonerated. Some of the approaches we will study are interview and narration, attempts to be invisible and objective, making the filmmaker a character in the film, and the Ken Burns style of depending on still photographs. Another thing to keep in mind is that though documentary is a powerful tool for understanding social reality, it must also be entertaining to compete in a crowded media marketplace. As in my fall 2020 Osher class, students will be expected to view the films online before class using the streaming database Canopy. Thank you to Towson University's Cook Library for making the films available free of charge. Class time will be spent on lecture, film clips, and student questions.
My name is Steve Dembo. I'm going to be giving a lecture series on photography in conflict and war. And we're going to start in the 19th century, actually just as photography was being made public, war photography and conflicts were of course going on, and photography started at that time. We'll start with actually there's a Roger Fenton, who is considered the first war photographer. The Crimea War was not really the first war photographer. There was an unknown photographer in the Mexican Revolution or in the mid 1900s. We're going to go through the Crimea War with several photographers. We'll talk about the Civil War, of course, with Matthew Brady and the 20 or so photographers who worked for him and with him. We won't talk about all 20, I promise, but we will talk about others like Gardner and some of the others photographers of the Civil War. We'll move on to World War I, where we have the first real action photographs. Prior to that, technology didn't allow major action photographs, and the timing was too long. So we see a lot of battlefield scenes after and before, but nothing really during. But during this World War I, we'll see some more of that. We'll go into the 20th century, of course. We'll talk about World War I, World War II, a lot of famous photographers, some you've probably heard of, Robert Capa, Chim, Eugene White, and some others, many others. We're going to move over to the Vietnam War, and we'll talk about David Douglas Duncan and a few others. We'll talk about Prague Spring, and we'll see about Joseph Kudelka, who photographed the Prague Spring and had to smuggle his images out because he would have obviously been arrested or and probably killed if they had found out whose photographs they were. Speaking of which, there were a lot of photographers, war photographers, who were killed during the line of duty. We're going to come up to the Middle East. We'll get into the Israel War. We'll talk about the Arab Spring, and we'll even come up to the present day, where we'll talk about protests and riots, Black Lives Matter protests, and others. We'll probably even come up to January 6th, because there were quite a few photographs there. We won't necessarily talk about individual photographers, because a lot of the war photography that's come out, especially some of the self-done photography, the Arab Spring, for instance, with cell phone cameras, et cetera, we don't know who the photographers are, but it's still photography that shows really what's going on in these conflicts and war. And it was the first time that photography was used to really show what was going on versus drawings and artwork that had been done previously before the photography was around. The course that we're doing starts, the first session is March 1st. The classes will meet Monday at 1 o'clock, and the second session is also Monday at 1 o'clock, and that starts April 5th. So it's an 8-week program. I'd really like to see a lot of you there. I think it should be pretty interesting, and you'll learn a lot about what's going on with conflict and photography, and how crazy some of these photographers were to get literally in the middle of these conflicts and get shot at or shot. So hope to see you all there. Thanks.
This is Michael Saltzman, welcoming you to our course on women artists and Western art history. Until recently, not a great deal was known about the contribution of women to painting and sculpture, and this has changed in recent years. Unlike our other courses, which stick pretty much to modern and contemporary art, this course will begin in the Renaissance, with some of the first women painters like Angelica Kauffman and Artissima Gentileschi. And then it will move on to the 19th century and artists like Hilma af Klint and the first modernists in the era of Georgia O'Keeffe. In the third lecture, we'll move on to women's contributions to abstract expressionism, which was the subject of a recent wonderful book that I highly recommend to all of you, called The Women of Ninth Street. And then in the fourth lecture, we'll bring things up to the present and such important contemporary artists such as Rachel White Reed and Cindy Sherman and Marina Abramovic. So I hope to see you all on our virtual course of the history of women artists in Western art. And I think we're going to have a great time, and it should be a very eye-opening experience for everyone. Thank you.
Come to Great Arts of Indigenous Mesoamerica. In this class, we will talk about the ancient visual arts of the Olmec, Maya, Zapotec, and Aztec peoples of Mexico and Guatemala. We'll discuss the way art is used to communicate within and across cultural boundaries and in social, political, and religious contexts. Some of the cultures and topics we'll look at include earliest Olmec art, 1200 BCE to the year 0 in the Western calendar. The Olmec are famous for their larger-than-life sculpted portrait heads and fine small jade figures. The great city of Teotihuacan, one of the 6 largest cities in the world of its time, 150 to 750 current era, and noted today for ongoing discoveries of subterranean passages under the temples and the emergence of the depictions of the feathered serpent in monumental form. The ancient Zapotec capital of Monte Alban, strategically placed on top of a mountain, with evidence of early calendars, tomb murals, and a presence at Teotihuacan. Mayan art of the Yucatan Peninsula and Guatemala, including the royal monuments that preserve the writing systems through and after the Spanish conquest and the colonial destruction of books. The Maya also made spectacular pottery with influences north into the American state of New Mexico and had a very early system of water containment and purification. The arrival and rise to power of the Aztecs in the Valley of Mexico, about 1250 current era. At the height of their imperial power in the 1500s, they used gold and elaborate featherwork in their royal art and had complex systems of money. Indigenous Mesoamerican cultures survive today and are expressed in their contemporary arts of weaving and ceramics. So please, come join the class, and thank you for listening.
Hi, everyone. This is Resig here again, Mike Resigliano. I taught a course at Osher a year ago called Cartoons and Why We Love Them. And we're going to do it again. We're going to do a kind of a sequel to that. So we're hoping, so it's going to be more of the same. We had a lot of fun in the class. We did some drawings together. We studied editorial cartoons. We studied Mad Magazine. We studied New Yorker cartoons. We wrote New Yorker captions, and people were great at it. So, we're going to do a little bit more of that. A little bit different for some of the people that maybe want to come back again. It won't be the same thing for some of the people that have never done it before. If you love cartoons, you might want to join us for this. It's going to be fun. We're doing it on Zoom. So it won't be in the classroom again, but I think it's going to be just fine on the Zoom. And I hope people will come in and show us your talents and your love for cartoons. Hope to see you in class. Thanks.
My name is Makita Brockman. Full-time, I'm a professor at MICA. I'm also a writer and a psychoanalyst. So this course is going to be just called Edgar Allan Poe Continued, but that doesn't mean that you have to have taken the first installment of the class, because my perspective, even though I have a background in literature, I'm also trained in psychology. So my approach to the stories tends to be psychological, folkloric, and a little bit of philosophy thrown in there too. I'll give you the stories in advance, and you can read them either before the lecture or perhaps let the lectures whet your appetites for the stories that you can read afterwards. We'll be looking at some of the more conventional and familiar work of Poe, like The Cask of Amontillado, The Masque of the Red Death, very appropriate in a time of COVID. But we'll also be looking at some of his less familiar work, like The Mesmeric Revelations, Morella, Ligeia. We'll also be spending a week on Poe's poetry at popular request, and we'll be looking at his philosophy, his themes, his reception, and the mysterious circumstances of his death in the streets of Baltimore in 1849. So if you're interested in taking a deep dive into some familiar and less familiar works of American literature, I look forward to having you in this class.
Hello, my Osher friends. I'm Ed Fotheringill, and I'll be teaching a course on Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism originated in China in the 6th century AD and is part of the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism. In this course, we will examine the historical background leading to the rise of Zen in China, its subsequent migration to Japan and other parts of Asia, and finally to the West and the United States. We'll also explore all the major philosophical themes of Zen, namely emptiness, impermanence, no self, non-attachment, presence, meditation, and enlightenment. And finally, I'm going to give special attention to the teachings of two great Asian Zen masters who came to the United States and were demonstrative in making Zen come alive in the West. Those teachers are the Japanese master Shunryu Suzuki and the Korean master Sung Son. So if you're interested in Buddhism and particularly Zen, I hope to see you in March. Thank you for your consideration.
Hi, everybody from Towson, Osher. I'm Bill Berry, and I'm glad to be back this spring. We have an exciting course, The History of Sparrows Point, and it's one of the most important locations for the Baltimore County, for the country, and for the world, because the world's largest steel plant meant so much to people in the area, and its closure was such a disaster. And it's particularly timely because so much attention is being paid and so much anger and energy is being generated by displaced industrial workers. And so we're going to look at the growth of Sparrows Point. We're going to look how it was founded, how it was built, and how it grew. We're going to look at what challenges it met as a plant. But in addition to looking at the plant, we're going to focus more on the people who worked there. And so we're going to look at the history of the town of Sparrows Point. We're going to look at the history of the town of Turner Station. We're going to look at the history of the town of Dundalk. And we'll look at how those areas became a community tied to this plant. One of the other things we're going to talk about is that it's generational, because people have gone back to Sparrows Point for 3 generations and worked. And one of the great things about doing programs about Sparrows Point is that there are people in the audience and participants who know more about the topic than I do because they work there. And they're more than eager to talk about it. It's a place of great memories and great experiences. And so what we're going to do during the period of the class is we're going to let people talk about what it was like to work there. We're also going to have guest speakers from different parts of the plant and different parts of the history. So it's an exciting course. We're obviously not going to have enough time. People will all complain that we don't get a chance to talk. But we encourage you to come. We encourage you to bring your memories of Sparrows Point. We're going to have recommended readings. We're going to have some videos. And as I said, we're going to have some guest speakers who worked at the plant and were active in all these different movements. So I look forward to seeing you, and I look forward to the Osher program, and I think it's going to be a great spring.
I'm Ed Berkowitz, and this spring I'll teach my very first course at Osher, The History of the Presidency in the 20th Century. The class will consist of 4 lectures or talks beginning on Monday, March 1st, and concluding on March 23rd. The class will consider the lives of key presidents in the 20th century, like Franklin Roosevelt and Theodore Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, and maybe a more recent president like Barack Obama. My interest in this subject stems from the classes I taught and books that I wrote when I was a professor of history and public policy at George Washington University. I've also worked at the Kennedy Library in Boston and on the staff of the President's Commission for a National Agenda for the 80s when Jimmy Carter was president, and also as part of the Associated Press's coverage of President Obama's inauguration. So I want to tell stories about the president's lives and see what they tell us about American political history And in general, I want to find out what the past can tell us about the present. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Bob Baer, and the class I'm going to be teaching this semester is Digging the Classical World. And in this class, what we're going to do is we're going to investigate a number of the most important archaeological sites associated with ancient Greece and Rome. That's known as the classical world. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at many of these areas, and we're going to look at the how they were discovered and how they were excavated, but also the very importance of these particular sites. And look at many of those areas. So the areas that we're going to be looking at, we're going to have 8 different classes, and each one is going to be a thematic area of a particular particular site or culture from the ancient Greek and Roman period. The first one's going to be the Mycenaean Civilization, which is really the origins of the ancient Greek culture going back to the Bronze Age period. And this is the period of the Trojan War, the origin of the Greek gods, the origin of Greek language, and many of the hero stories all go back to this period. But we're going to look at especially like archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann and the discovery of the ancient Mycenaean period, and then look at other sites such as Pylos and Tyrant and some of the very early discoveries. Now, we're also going to look at Athens, the most important of all the Greek cities. We're going to look at some of the sites around the birth of democracy and the birth of theater, and of course the Parthenon and some of the other sites there. We're also going to look at the next lecture will be on Olympia. This is the home of the Olympic Games. It's also one of the most important religious sanctuaries in all of Greece. And this is also where archaeology became revolutionized archaeology, really created a sense of modern archaeology, was during the 1870s at Olympia. We're also then going to go to Delphi, is one of the most important also religious sanctuaries, and this is the home of the great Oracle of Delphi, where people would come from all over the Greek world to have their prophecies read. Also, the last of the Greek ones, we're going to look at the world of Alexander the Great, because he founded many cities, places like Alexandria, and all the great legacy and a tremendous amount of archaeology surrounding him. Then we're going to go on to Rome. We're going to look at the city itself of Rome and some of the Roman Empire sites. Rome is a city is constantly having new discoveries as they dig under the ancient city. So a lot of fascinating things. We'll also be going to Pompeii. This is the buried city, which continues to have major discoveries every year. So this is a new major one. And lastly, we're going to look at Roman Britain. Britain, the Romans actually occupied and had the culture of England, Britain for about 400 years. And this is where they really began modern culture of Britain, introducing civilization and language and all. So we're going to look at the excavations and discoveries in all of these different places. And I hope you can join me.
Hello there. I'm John Spears, a historian, and I've taught at TU Lifelong Learning twice before, although not recently. I'd like to tell you humankind's greatest story as a species, how we overcame great challenges and flourished. In fact, we even took over the world. This can only be done by a grand vista, a sweep of time from 70,000 years to the present, a period covered by my course, A Quick History of Humans. Some of you may remember that I offered the same course in 2016, except it's not, of course, the same course now. Since then, I've been doing a lot of reading and have revised pieces of it. So the course will be somewhat different this time. It's the results of progress, especially in the areas of DNA-based genomic research and archaeology. In addition, I've read and benefited from a number of works, including such interestingly titled books as Azar Gatt's War and Human Civilization, Donald Brown's Human Universals, Steven Pinker's The Better Angels of Our Nature, and Stephen Mithen's After the Ice, an archaeological tour around the world. A whole lot, this whole lot comes lavishly illustrated and enhanced with maps, tables, and quotes. Join us, as many of you have in the past. It'll be a wild ride. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Bob Moore, and I will present the course Jean Jaurès, Martyr for Peace, working with my friend Eric Stewart. Most well-educated Americans have never heard of Jean Jaurès, yet he was one of the most important figures in France in the period before the Great War of 1914 to 1918. He was a politician, historian, journalist, philosopher, orator, and the most important peace activist of his time. He spent the last 8 years of his life trying to prevent the war that he saw coming. Jaurès was assassinated on the eve of the First World War by a French nationalist who believed that Jaurès was a traitor due to his efforts to prevent France from going to war in 1914. Jaurès was an ardent defender of French democracy and a leader of the coalition that defended the cause of Alfred Dreyfus, a French Jew who was unjustly sent to prison for treason. He was also the founder of the French Socialist Party, working tirelessly to defend the rights of the working class. In our time of rising nationalism, great inequality, and challenges to democratic ideals, I find that Jaurès is relevant. He was a strong advocate for justice and peace, and he believed that his goals could be achieved through democratic dialogue based on reason and truth. I hope that you will join me and my colleague Eric Stewart in this course, which begins on March 1st.
My name is Guillermo Worley. I will be teaching in the spring the class on technology innovations and the social implications of technology. I have a degree in electronics engineering. I have almost 40 years of experience designing electronic products in a number of different industries. And I developed an interest in the artificial intelligence and the ethics behind technology and the implications that technology has on society. So we will be discussing those issues. We will look at what technology is, what innovation is, the processes, and the ethical dilemmas that they bring about, as well as the unintended consequences of technology. And then we will look a little bit more in detail at the things, the technology behind autonomous vehicles or self-driving cars, drones, assisted technology for disabled people, seniors, and people in remote places. And time permitting, we'll take a look at some alternative sources of energy. The focus will be primarily not on technical details, but on the social implications of technology and how it's present in our lives. And of course, we can't avoid in these times to take a look at the technology role on COVID-19, especially in the early stages of the pandemic. So I hope you find this interesting, and I hope to see you in the spring. And thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Greg Pevsner, and I would like to talk to you about the course called History of Atomic Theory. It is a common knowledge today that everything around us consists of myriads of tiny particles, both molecules and atoms. Have you ever wondered how people came to this idea? After all, it is far from obvious. Atoms cannot be seen or felt. But still, by the beginning of the 20th century, almost all scientists firmly believed in atoms. This course will answer this question. I will take you on a historical tour that starts in ancient Greece and spans 2,600 years to the beginning of the last century. On the way, you will meet many fascinating characters. Some of my favorites are inventor of Adam's laughing philosopher Democritus, English aristocrat Robert Boyle, who invented chemistry, and French aristocrat Antoine Lavoisier, who made it a real science and ended his life under the knife of a guillotine. And a Viennese professor, Ludwig Boltzmann, a man who trusted atoms and was driven to suicide by colleagues who doubted them. You will hear stories of the mythical race between Achilles and a tortoise, and a little demon sorting out molecules to create a perpetuum mobile. By the end of this journey, I hope to convince you that accepting reality of atoms was inevitable. I hope you will be interested in this course, and I hope to see many of you in March. Thank you.
Welcome to the 2021 Osher Spring Preview. My name is Robin Tress, and I'll be teaching a class about butterflies. This class will cover many topics, but will focus on the 3 things that you need in order to create a butterfly garden. First, how to identify the specific butterflies that you want to see. Second, what you have to plant in order to encourage those butterflies into your garden. Third, how butterflies get through the winter and how we can help them. We'll start with a walk through the 3 stages in the life cycle of the eastern tiger swallowtail: egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, adult, and the nutritional requirements or lack thereof at each stage. We all know that adult butterflies lead nectar, but ensuring that the females have the right plants under which to lay their eggs and the caterpillars have the right protein to allow them to become adults are equally important. We'll do detailed identification of 48 butterflies, and as we describe each one, we'll cover the plant or plants that are needed for eggs and caterpillars. We'll emphasize the native plants that had co-evolved with our native butterflies and are their preferred hosts. This leaves me with the topic of overwintering. The majority of our summer butterflies do overwinter in this area, but they do so at different life stages dependent on the species. We need to understand just how this works and how we can either help or hinder them. There will be a handout distributed in PDF format when you get the link to your first Zoom meeting. It will list all 48 species, their required host plants, and lots of other good information. So, until we meet again, please do stay safe.
I'm Dr. Jody Johnson, and I'm teaching a course on world pollinators. The first class will be on types of pollination. So this could be either abiotic, which are physical forces that cause pollination, or biotic, which are animal vectored pollinators. When I introduce the animal the animal groups, they're going to be covering from bees to flies to moths to butterflies to birds to mammals to lizards. In the second class, I look at the complexity of a mutualistic relationship between plants and animals. So this is symbiosis, and it benefits both. It'll benefit both kingdoms. This is very complex, and it has to do with how plants and animals communicate to each other as pollination is taking place. The third, it will be about honeybees and their role in making U.S. agriculture successful. And honeybees are unusual because they're a social insect and not a solitary insect. So we'll discuss those ramifications. And the fourth is to address things that a person that has any land management, whether it's your backyard or you work for a park or you're working for an arboretum, whatever. It addresses how to encourage pollinators on that land that you're managing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you, and can't wait to get started. Bye.
Hello, I am Sandra Perez, Professor Emeritus from the Towson University Department of Dance. In this class, you'll be learning how to use the language of movement to express, such as Sandra is singing, to relieve tension, increase range of motion, improve balance and memory. In other words, to overall feel better through dance, exercise, breathwork, and relaxation. But let's take a look at that memory part. This is a small dance step routine that we'll be learning. Try it with me. Heel, heel, toe, toe, out. Together, clap, snap. I'll even show it in a chair for those who might want to do this class in a chair. Heel, heel, toe, toe, out. Together, clap, snap. Let's put it all together. Sandra sinewy. Release tension. Increase range of motion. Improve balance and memory. Clap, snap. So you see, it doesn't take a lot of space, but I guarantee at the end of our 8-week sessions, you'll have a dance that we've created together, and you'll feel looser, more invigorated, and more focused. I hope you'll join me in your dance studio in March. See you then, and have a great day. Thank you.